Good evening and welcome to the Velocity of Now with me, your host Thomas Sheridan. It's just past 11 p.m. here on Irish and GMT time, and most of you back in the East Coast United States are probably only getting home from work now, and the rest of the United States are probably 2015. The year is well and truly halfway over, and what an interesting year it's been. It's tonight I want to talk about more of the esoteric but Fortean kind of aspects of this, and this was triggered by a recent visit to an art exhibition. Before I get there, let me give the details. I know you've been enjoying the shows lately and the ratings have been fantastic, but my website is thomassheridanarts.com. If you want to support me or help me out, you can buy a book there. There's a tab that says Bookshop. If you wish and you've no money to help me out, well, you can just share the articles, and that even helps, or share the videos. That helps as well. So anything you can do there to help me get the word out and get this information out, because I'm not interested really in politics or anything like that anymore, or globalization or all that stuff. I've done and said all I can do about that. And my life is in a much more creative place now. I've been going through a tremendous creative period lately, and all that's left for me is the creativity of exploring the mysterious at this point. Mysteries of the mind, mysteries of mythology, mysteries of history, and so forth. And human behavior, but not human behavior in a Pavlovian Watson type of way, human behavior in a subconscious manner, and how we relate to each other, and what drives us, and what causes neuroses, and what causes happiness, and what causes joy. Now, tonight's show is about a subject that all of us know all about, well, we should know about it, and it's called sleep. Now, it may seem a funny thing to talk about sleep, but I think sleep and the idea of sleep is far more deeper and far more mysterious than what we've been told or led to believe. I think sleep is the one chance. When people say, I've never had a paranormal or I've never had a mystical experience, well, when you go to sleep at night and you dream, you have. I'm convinced of that. Now, if people say to me, well, this is a bit far-fetched that you're saying that sleep is a paranormal or a mystical experience, well, yes, because even today in 2015, almost nothing is known about sleep and what sleep is. Almost nothing. It is a gigantic mystery. It's a gigantic mystery for a couple of reasons. Firstly, the main tools, not surprisingly, to examine it have been, firstly, the neurology, brain science, brain chemistry, and while that has revealed aspects of what happens during sleep physiologically, such as rapid eye movements and REM sleep, it's now been shown that when you sleep, basically waste matter that's used in neurotransmissions is thrown out, is dumped out of the brain and removed, so the brain is almost cleaned by sleep. It's also been well known that sleep has the function of a restorative aspect to the physiology. That's why people who take naps are much less likely to get cardiovascular problems or heart attacks than people who don't take naps. There is a regenerative aspect to it that all mammals and some reptiles and fish and some other creatures share when they go to sleep. But that's only one aspect of it. The actual restorative element of it, the cleansing element of it, the health aspects of it. But there's far more deeper aspects to it than that. I would actually go as far as stating that I believe that sleep is the other side of us. Again, the skeptic in me says it's a bit of a stretch, but the experiential aspect of me knows that there's much more to it, that dreams are far more profound, that we're not just in this body experiencing some kind of altered state of consciousness. I truly believe that when we dream, we actually enter into another version of ourselves in another dimension, in another reality. And probably because of either the primitive nature of our brain as it stands now, or education, society, civilization, and so on, has educated the experience of what sleep is out of us, so we don't actually experience it to the fullness, is why it seems incredibly real at the time when we dream, and upon waking is very difficult to remember. This could be rooted in the fact, this could be an evolutionary aspect of this. Either we've lost this ability to reconcile the two states of awake and asleep, or should we say this reality and the nocturnal reality, or because of our neural pathways being rewired and our neural partitions being changed by a new regimented lifestyles, that we have lost the ability to enjoy this other side of us, this nocturnal version of us. In the last year or so, I've made a specific attempt to try and live in both worlds. I'll talk about this later, and it's a very interesting idea, and I've had some interesting results. Firstly, I want to say that I was almost an insomniac for probably the first 30 years of my life. I was a dreadful sleeper, especially in my 20s and my late 20s. I could not sleep. I used to go, I'm not kidding you, almost for days on end without sleeping. I could not sleep. One of the reasons for this was I used to have horrific nightmares when I was younger, including, those of you who are looking at this video now, you will see that Fuseli painting, Henry Fuseli's painting of the nightmare, and that ape-like creature which I've spoken about in the past, which attacked me when I was 17, and I never could sleep properly after that for fear of being attacked. There's also a history of night hags attacks in my family, and I want to talk about what these entities are and what they represent. And so I think because of that, plus that I have a very active creative brain, I literally have great difficulty shutting my brain down. I'm not complaining about it. I love it. People always say to me, how do you have time to do all these things in your life? It's simply because my brain is going in overload constantly, and I have to do them. But as productive as I am now, I was literally on fire during my 20s, non-stop. The fact that I would have to knock myself out by drinking alcohol. So I would drink most nights just to put myself asleep. Not not a heavy amount to drink or anything like that. I'd have like a few beers at bedtime, maybe three or four cans, just to knock me out. And you can handle that stuff when you're younger because you can jump out of bed next morning. But that was the only way I could get to sleep. I used to literally, not kidding you, I used to literally go 24 hours a day, literally, for years and years and years and years and years. And now I'm very, very good at sleeping. I'm absolutely wonderful at sleeping now, and I love sleeping. I enjoy sleeping, and I still have those, shall we say, entity attacks. Though the last one I had was in 2012, and it was a prophetic, shall we say, entity attack. Now, when I use the word entity, I'm literally meaning other forms of life. Now, those of you who are skeptical out there, conscious existence, who are skeptical out there, that's okay. I understand where you're coming from, but I and millions of people in the sleep world have encountered these things, and they're more real in some ways because they affect you at a more terrifying level and a more emotionally deep level than what happens during your waking time. So if you can have the most incredible experience in terms of fear, in terms of terror, while you're supposedly in a sleep state, and then they tell you that that's not real, and it's more real in how it affects you than what you've ever felt in your real daily life, well, I think that's bullshit, because I think both states are both sides of us. This program could be easily titled The Other Side of You, or The Other Side of Us. Now, what got me thinking about sleep again was that I went to see an exhibition at the beautiful and wonderful Model Gallery in Sligo, which is one of the least stupid public galleries. They actually make an attempt to put on decent shows and get decent artists in from around the world. Although it can, like all public galleries, there is an element to put shit in there as well. But there was an exhibition I went to called Psychic Lighthouse, and it was to do with the occult aspects, or inspired by the occult aspects of W.B. Yeats's work. This is a big year for W.B. Yeats, who is famous in Sligo, although he was born in Dublin. The poet, he was a mystical poet and a member of the Golden Dawn, and he was involved in a famous fight with Crowley, and he wrote eloquently and voluminously on fairy fate and folklore in this part of the world. So I went expecting nothing from this experience, this art gallery show. And yes, it was mostly crap. It was mostly the usual pretentious art school, sponsored artist, chosen artist garbage, except for one that left me stunned. It left me stunned because it was an artwork that took me into an altered state of consciousness. It was called 4 or 5 Stages of a Dream. And it was in the far end of the gallery. They'd blackened out a series of rooms. And the first room you enter into, from the light, there was a pedestal in the middle of the room with 2 candles on it. What looked like a demonic face projected onto a back screen, just faintly. And then you went around the corner into a room, and in the room, which is barely lit, on the floor, what looked like a cadaver. It was the somnambulist Cesare from the movie The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. It looked like a cross between that and Michael Jackson in his latter Middle Ages stage, when he had the part in his hair. And when you entered this point and saw this thing lying on the floor, you were immediately transformed into another, shall we say, shift in consciousness, which shows that it was also visiting gallery in the afternoon, so there was nobody around, which also shows that you can trigger these shifts in consciousness using art and light and mood. You don't have to take drugs of any kind. It can be done through stimuli or using lighting in certain ways. At the end of the room was a door that went to a very dark room, and when you turned the corner On the back of the wall was a giant projection screen, very, very wide. It was probably about 30 feet wide by about 15 feet high. And what was in there was about 30 or 40 people just staring at you. And they were just looking at you, but they were not stiff. They were moving because you'd see them breathing and looking at you and moving their heads or scratching their cheek. And they were all staring at you. And it was exactly the effect that you feel when you're in a dream. When you see things, they're not moving at the same speed as the clock speed in your normal daylight brain. There's an element of slow motion to it. And there was no sound. And there was an American girl there I got talking to, and it blew her mind as well. And when I came out, I literally felt, yes, that's it. This artist, I can't remember the name, I feel bad about it right now, had captured what dreams feel like. And it just dawned on me and concreted into my consciousness this idea that, yes, that's what sleep is. Sleep is another form of us, another side of us. And I've been specifically trying to have, shall we say, a quality of life in the dream world. I'm not taking my dreams for granted. Now, I've always kept a dream diary. Those of you who have followed my work right back to the very first talk video I ever had online, painting yourself out of a corner, which was done at the ARC convention in Bath in 2000 and early 2000, I think 2011, I think it was, or early 2012. And I spoke about how important the dream diary is for me, and it is. And the dream diary allowed me to note the dreams, but I've stopped using the dream diary in the last few months, and the dream journal, writing it down or drawing little pictures. Instead, I've tried to have a conscious dialogue with the memories in my consciousness as I wake up. Now, we all seem to forget dreams when we wake up, and that's literally because one side of us is being erased and another side of us is being built. If you could consciously, and I believe that you could, if you could consciously exist in the dream state as we do in the waking state, you would probably find that you could not remember what happened to you in your waking state. It was difficult to remember. Have you ever had a dream in your dream state where you've remembered what happened during the day when you were awake? You don't. You're literally, there's two sides to us. It's almost like we're turned inside out at a psychic level, and we experience these two worlds. Now, it's been shown that healing from injuries happens much faster when you're asleep. Anyone who's had an operation, you'll sleep constantly after the operation for days on end, and you heal very, very quickly. At the same time, what is healing in the other world, in this world? So what damage that's caused to you in the dream world is in this world. Now, the dream world is surreal, it's scary, it's very, very odd, but it doesn't follow the same narrative of this world. But that's only because we're recalling the perception of that experience in our waking life. In the actual trip through consciousness in the dream world, it's probably very different. In fact, I've got fleeting experiences of the dream when it seems so real that I could touch things. This is why we often have a very full sex life with people we don't know in the dream world. And it's happened to me, and it can be very embarrassing when a woman you work with, and you don't have a relationship with them, or you're not even that particularly attracted to them, and you have sex with them in a dream. It can, for me anyway, it can be very embarrassing meeting them the next time. And it's just what it is. It's just like is that person and you involved in a relationship on the other side? If so, this is unbelievably fucking powerful, because it allows us, and this would be in the interest of the control grid to suppress us, to suppress this idea, that it allows us to be something completely else on the other side. So the limitations that we experience in this reality do not exist in the dream reality, in the sleeping reality. And that is enormously, enormously powerful when you think about it. Now, when we enter this world of sleep, this nocturnal landscape, we often encounter entities and beings that don't exist normally, although they have been seen in this reality. Okay, we're talking about the monkey from the Fuseli painting, which attacked me, and I know I was awake when I was both asleep and awake when that happened. And that's an important aspect of too. That flip over between the sleeping state and the waking state. There was a group in France in the late 1800s called the Somnauts, and they were an arts group, and they attempted to, through having someone waking them when they fell asleep, to try and keep them, gently keeping them half awake, to try and get them to explore the gap between awake and sleep. And that way they could relay and then suddenly wake up and tell people what they saw and experience the somnatic experience as somnauts. And I like this idea. This is what I've been trying to do myself. The idea of being a somnaut as not just, well, I wouldn't even say that, the other side of me, but the somnatic idea of traveling there with a purpose and an intent, I think is very, very powerful. Now these entities we encounter, many of us, such as the Fuseli one, such as the night hag. Now I have a history of night hags on my mother's side of the family, night hag attack, and it's an interesting one. The night hag, it seems to be that it's almost like there's an evolutionary process within these entities themselves. Like in biblical times, you heard about the succubus and the incubus. You don't hear. Have a drink here. Sorry. You don't hear an awful lot about that today. You don't hear an awful lot about the incubus and the succubus. You know. Well, the thing is that they could have actually been having sex. Nowadays, what we call sex dreams were probably the what they called the incubus and succubus dreams. But there was a trend a few years ago or a year ago where you had all these Hollywood stars, these morons, who were saying that they were having ghost sex and sex with ghosts in their sleep. This is very dangerous shit to be involved with. But there's the ape, you know, the question I keep asking myself is there an aristocracy of the shadow world? Is there an elite of these entities? Is there a hierarchy? Is there a class system within them? The ape-like creature seems to be quite like the lower end of it. That's like the lowest end of it. Then the kind of like the white trash end of it is the hag, the sleeping hag, the night hag, whatever. The old woman that lies on people's chests and stares into their face and cuts their air off. And now you have the shadow figures that are all everyone's talking about now. Again, there's like an evolution in these things. In the same way there's an evolution in the paranormal experiences, which I think are the same thing. Like you'd have people talking about aliens. You had fairies, jinn. Then you had things like Spring-Heeled Jack. Then you had space aliens. Then you had shadow people. And now then everyone's starting to say now, I think they're all the same thing, and I agree with that. And I'm going to talk about that a bit later on as well. But I think they're all the same thing. But I think there's it's either wired to our consciousness or we go through stages. But I think the shadow man and the shadow figure with the brimmed hat seems to be the elite currently of these entities that people appear with. Now, John Keel wrote a book called I forget what it's called, Our Haunted Planet. A very good book, actually, you haven't read it. And he spoke about a comic book that we've all heard about it. A comic book called The Shadow. And the author of that book, who wrote the Shadow comics and the Shadow short stories, wrote enormous amount of these stories in an apartment in Greenwich Village in New York. And when people moved in afterwards, they used to see the Shadow, like the Shadow version of the Shadow, the silhouette of the guy with the cape and the wide brim hat in the apartment building that this guy lived in Greenwich Village, like as if he created Tulpa. But at the same time too, that shadow creature seems to be multiplying. So culture and art and creativity seems to be very heavily connected to the creation of these entities. You look at the Communion book with Ridley Stryper and the classic grey alien on the cover, and he was seeing them in dreamlike states. Now, what's the difference between them and, say, altered states of consciousness created by entheogens? People who take entheogens, LSD, myself have done that, mushrooms, DMT, ayahuasca, I falsely assume that they're entering into that same dream world. I don't think they're going anywhere like that. I think that that's a very dangerous game, and if I'm never going to. I've decided I'm not going to take these chemicals ever again. I'm not going to take entheogens ever again, for two reasons. One, it's been shoved down our faces in recent years by the mainstream, and that's always bad news for the rest of us. And secondly, I do believe that you're not taken into anywhere real or significant. You're given a light show, you're given a spectacle, and so these entities can jump into you. I'm absolutely convinced no good comes from this, because my Facebook page is filled with people, well, it was until I got rid of them, who are all raving anti-Semites, white nationalists, and yet if you look down in the filled with hate, filled with all kinds of this bullshit, and when you look down the corner, their favourite books or their favourite films, the DMT, the spirit molecule, which you know is sponsored by who? Freemasons. So I'm very wary. I'm not telling people, that they should stop it. I don't care if you inject yourself with badger shit. That's your own business. I'm just saying this is what I choose to live in my life. You can do whatever the fuck you want. I'm not pushing my life on you. I'm very dubious about that whole DMT thing, especially as it's sold in a salvation kind of way, in a kind of evangelical Christian way, that this is the answer to our problems. This is the answer to our world. I'm very suspicious of anything that's ever sold like that. And the proof that that's not the answer is, well, firstly, I told you that the people who've taken it and talk about how spiritual they've all become are bigger cunts than ever when they get back. I've noticed that. They may have a week or two of them being all kinds of like airy-fairy, but they go back eventually to even being bigger cunts than what they were when they first started. Secondly, I have yet to hear or meet anyone who's taken entheogens who saw a glimpse of the future, but yet just about everyone I know has had a dream which came true. So they're two different things. That to me proves the dream state and the entheogen state are two different things. The dream state truly, truly does take you to real places, because it's not a light show, it's not a movie in your consciousness, you're actually fucking going there. The fact is, you bring back information that translates into this world, i.e. there's nothing more convincing than having a dream and it comes true. I've had it several times, I know other people have it, and I know you probably all have had it at some stage. Dreams are prophetic because they are real, unlike entheogen trips, which are not real. Now, I've been listening to a lot of H.P. Lovecraft audiobooks lately, and apart from the fact that I see so much of the memes about the fears and phobias in the so-called alternative scene, their origin is in that. Let me just have a quick coffee here. Their origins are in that. I don't think that these things develop accidentally. And if you listen to a lot of the H.P. Lovecraft, read the books, which I did years ago, but I haven't got time to read any fucking thing anymore. So I enjoy listening to old audiobooks. And so, a lot of the stories that Lovecraft wrote about were rooted in things he had nightmares of. But when he wrote them into his short stories and into his novels, the concept of the dream being an aspect of it is very important. Like in The Call of Cthulhu, that story has so many aspects to it that revolve in the dream world, particularly the professor who's now deceased, and his nephew is looking up his old letters, is obsessed with people around the world having dreams about specific things on specific dates. That they're almost having the same experience of this gigantic creature, these elder ones, these ancient ones that exist, in the bottom of the seas or in the oceans or in another dimension coming back. At the same time, too, he checked newspaper articles of wild events around the world and clippings, and he employed a clipping service. And again, it was about sleep. It was about what sleep was the catalyst. In fact, he even wrote a book called Beyond the Walls of Sleep as well. And then there was the lurking fear. And in the lurking fear, again, sleep and dreams play an enormous part in how Lovecraft conveys this idea that it's not just a different state of consciousness, but it's in many mythology, the sleep also represents, and the dream, in the sleep, also represents a transformative aspect. In the Cuchulainn story, his girlfriend, or his wife girlfriend to be, she takes a drink of a cup of wine or mead, and inside it is a fly. The fly that she swallows is the god Lu, who comes to her in a dream and transports her in a dream awake state as a swan into exile. The dream to our ancestors was a very, very different thing. Now, with these entities that appear in dreams, and I've no doubt that they're not just figments of our imagination, that they're not just, shall we say, visions or illusions or anything like that, and they're not this Freudian idea of manifestations of our sexual problems in this life or our sexual inadequacies appearing in the dreams as snakes and so on. They're not. They're none of those things. Jung, I think, got closest when he had the dream which educated him about the collective unconscious, where he was going through different layers of an old house until he found the ancient primordial humans in the deepest part of the basement. In the dream world, we often solve problems. In this world, I have went to bed with a problem or an issue in my mind that I couldn't figure out, and when I woke up the next morning, I instantly had the problem fixed. Now, if I was in a sleeping state where my brain was shut down, and neuroscientists tell you go into this REM sleep state in order to keep brain activity from shutting down, a good hypothesis. I think it really is. But that would not explain you fixing a problem in the morning. This would not explain you if you'd lost something, many of us had, that during the dream, even if we did not physically lose that object, like for instance, if we could not find the keys, right, we lost the keys to the house, keys to the car, and we didn't put them away somewhere. They fell out of our pocket. When we changed a coat, they fell and rolled under a table or rolled, and we went to bed. Where's me feckin' keys? Where the hell are they? And you go to sleep, and then you wake up in the next morning and you say, oh, they're under the wardrobe, and you look down and that's where they are. There's no way that that's just you thinking about it. What about cases where other people have lost things, for instance, belonging to you? So suppose you had put the keys down and say your wife or your husband or your boyfriend or your friend picked them up and put them for safekeeping somewhere else in a place you would have normally never looked, and then you wake up the next morning and you say, oh, they're in the dresser behind in the other back room, and where you would never put them, and you go back there and you find them. That's not you even relaying your footsteps and going through possible places they could have been lost. The only way you could have possibly known that your keys were in the back room or in some place you didn't put them the next morning when you wake up is either you had travelled during the night in some kind of out-of-body experience, and that's another one thing I want to talk about as well, or you had a third party in that dream had solved it and told you where they were, which is quite frightening to think about it, because is that third party an entity living in your own home that's watching everything? Now, as for this thing of astral traveling and all this stuff, going to the astral plane, I've never experienced it, but I know so many people who have that sensation of falling out of their bodies and suddenly out of their body and looking around, or they've had an accident and seeing themselves. I don't believe that that's the same thing either, because for all the people who've ever astral travelled, none of them have come back with anything useful. None of them have come back with any useful information. You know what I'm saying? Like, if they found something out that happened a week before it happened, was it publicly announced? They never seem in astrals travelling to ever see that coming back. But in sleep states, they do all the time. When HMS Hood, the British battleship in World War II, was sunk, there was a great fear of telling the public because their biggest battleship had been lost, were a tremendous loss of life. Well, people in England had dreams of HMS Hood sinking. And on the day it did, in the manner it did, it was sunk either by the German battleship, the Tirpitz or the Bismarck, one of the others, one of the two big ones. And the Hood went down, which was would have been an enormous psychological crutch for the British government to have to announce it. They had to break the news in the right way, the way for a victory, and then say, oh, by the way, the Hood went down, was sunk. But these people who knew about the Hood sinking were taken in and arrested as German spies because they believed they had an Enigma machine at home or something, and that they had found this out through their espionage circles with, working for the Germans. The reality was they went there in dreamland, or people who had died on HMS Hood had told them in dreams they were killed on HMS Hood. They drowned in the middle of the Atlantic. Now, these things have never happened in entheogen states, and they've never happened in astral traveling states. They only happen in REM sleep states, which shows you for all these people taking all these substances to try and get to the other side, that really they have the power already in them in sleep. And yet they're taking it for granted, and they're not fully utilizing it. Now, there are people who don't dream, and there's a couple of reasons for this. Psychopaths don't dream. Because dreaming seems to take place in the frontal cortex of the brain. Psychopaths don't have an active frontal cortex, so they don't seem to dream. There's other people who are not psychopaths who don't dream. People who drink a lot of alcohol don't dream. People who smoke cannabis and marijuana don't dream. People who are heavy pot smokers and got off the weed often remark about how one of the great things about that was they dream again. because they didn't dream when they were on it, because they didn't dream at all when they were on it. And so it just shows to show you that a lot of this substance culture of, tune in, trip out, the answer, fade on, whatever it is, that Timothy Leary thing, and Graham Hancock and the rest of them promoting these ideas of using these drugs to get, they're not taking us to the real places. They may be taking us to a very dangerous places. They may be distractions or diversions for these entities, which I do believe actually do exist. Whatever they are. Call them fairies, jinn, demons, and so on. You call them whatever you want, but I do believe they exist. The only thing that seems real is dreams. And so, if you're listening to this show, one of the things I would like to start here is a kind of a dream project. The living dream project, we should call it. The idea that not only when we dream will we try to remember them the next morning, contemplate them, but while we're actually dreaming themselves, try to make ourselves conscious and work within that dream in order to enhance our experience and our life as human beings. Because I'm starting to believe seriously that we're only working on 50% of our consciousness. The other 50% in the dreamland, or the dream time, as your Aborigines call it, is an unexplored country, or it's a country that we once explored in our early past, but we've lost our ability to go there. It's almost like we don't have the ship to get us there anymore. Civilization, regimentation, who knows what, seems to have taken this away from us. I think now is a really good time to look into this idea of making our dreams something really special and powerful for us. Now, there are dangers when you go into, in the old days when they went to the darkest Africa, or they explored the unknown regions of the world, there was always the fear of dangers. And when we're going into an unexplored or a little explored country such as the dream world, there will be dangers because we're already aware that these beings are in there. Now, why do they attack us? Well, according to the fairy folklore fate, it's because they're jealous of the world we inhabit. Maybe we enter into their world when we go into the dream world. Maybe it's a kind of a no man's land, or a no consciousness land, or a no waking conscious land, where both can interact. Maybe the fright allows them to invade into us. Who knows? But one thing I can absolutely say for certain is, and this is going to piss off a lot of people, but I do not believe that space aliens have ever visited this planet and that human beings have ever been in contact with aliens from other planet. I believe that that's all the same thing as the jinn, the demons, the fairies, the night hags, the ghosts, and you name it. They're all the same thing. There has been no concept that in the history of the paranormal, there has been no concept more widely pushed by the establishment than the idea of alien contact. They pushed nothing with that level. It's official. They've had it from Roswell on. They've made it official. The highest level of all the governments to push this idea that humans are experiencing alien contact on this planet happening here because aliens from other planets have arrived here. Now, those of you who call yourself awake, you trust everything, you distrust everything the government tells you. I don't trust them about fluoride. I don't trust them about the money system. I don't trust them about the legal system. Hey, there's a policeman in America who said he saw an alien. Hey, there's a British Air Force officer who said he saw an alien spacecraft. It must be true. So you seem to, whenever the authority figure points out the alien thing, you believe that one. I believe the aliens were invented for a very specific purpose. Firstly, as you know, I've spoken about how I believe the whole Roswell psyop was to have Americans believing that aliens existed so they wouldn't get terrorized. You know, Americans are like to scare easy. When the Russians detonate their H-bomb, happened believing that they had spaceman technology. I also believe that with the vacuum and the death of religion, religion, they spoke about succubus, incubus, demons, and so on. There was still these things were still happening to human beings, so they had to invent space aliens. So in the past, when demons or these entities came into people's bedrooms, they were succubus, incubus, demons, fairies, night hags, shadow people, whatever. And so they had to get them believing it was aliens. So it was always an aliens came into my room and I had an alien contact. I was abducted by aliens. They took samples from my skin. They had sex with me. They took semen samples from me. They're trying to create, as that guy Bud Hopkins said, they're trying to create alien-human hybrids and all this nonsense. And yes, all it was a retelling of a same old story. The entities that come at night or that we experience at night. That's all it was, a retelling. However, something interesting has happened. This alien abduction psyop has died a death in recent years. It has died a death in recent years, and no matter how much it's pushed, and my God, they're pushing it more than ever. I was looking at a few of the American cable TV networks. I don't know what they were. The big ones, like the Discovery type channels and the learning and the history. And everything was Agent Aliens, Roswell, alien abduction, alien visitation, aliens this, aliens that. None speck and stop. None stop. And it just makes you suspicious. It just makes you highly suspicious. So with the death of religion, people are still going to have these experiences. So they have to create a new vernacular, paranormal, spiritual, magical vernacular to explain these experiences that people had at night. And it tied up very nicely with the idea that governments were in control, had alien bases under the earth and all this nonsense. None of it's true. Because in many ways, it's far more... A government would not want human beings knowing that we have another life in the dream world. It would not serve the system well in any way for them to know that we have in the dream world another version of ourselves. Because then we would not place so much of our expectations and our fears, our neuroses, our failings, and all our other experiences that our modern life within this reality. Because we would almost like have another side to us. So if people wouldn't say, I don't care about the US elections, I don't care about if it's Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton, those two pieces of shit, I don't care. I've got a whole other life in the dream world that they don't exist in it. It would make us very easy to control. Very easy for them, very uneasy, difficult for them to control us. Because we would be fully experienced somewhere else. This would also tie in with the idea of nightmares. That they make us afraid of these experiences, don't have them. What if these nightmares are just the beachhead that you have to pass, like an initiation, like a somnunatic nocturnal initiation, that when you get past the nightmare part, you have a full experience of existence within the dream world. It's all to play for. It's all to play for because, as I said, they haven't a clue what sleep is. They can tell you what some of the physiological aspects of it are in terms of like cleaning out brain matter, restorative things, helping heart functions. But those things will happen also if you have naps. Naps are just as physiologically healing and beneficial as full deep sleep. Sleep is something else completely. And it's so strange how everybody has a complete... There's probably no physiological state other than our faces and our fingerprints that varies so widely from person to person as sleeping habits. We all have different sleeping habits, all of us. And were regulated by the culture. When I was a kid growing up in Ireland, the TV used to end at 11:30 at night, and they used to show the Irish flag and play the national anthem. I know that happened in other countries too. I know it happened in England. I used to see on British television they play "God Save the Queen." Now that was very interesting that they would film, and they're basically saying, "Fuck off and go to bed. You've been awake long enough. You're being told to go to bed, right?" Firstly, it's interesting that happens long, and is enough that it's strange enough that they'll tell you to do that. But secondly, to fill your head full of patriotism and images of the Queen if you lived in the UK before you went to sleep, that was the last thing you saw. Very interesting. Very interesting. And now when they brought the 24-hour economy in, the sleep is not so important anymore. But still, people are now working longer and later hours, that they're so completely exhausted, psychologically and mentally, more so than physically, that they don't even seem to dream. Because that's another way you can stop. You can affect your dreaming by being emotionally having and psychologically worn out. That seems to stop dreaming as well. And so it doesn't. That's how they're doing it now. Everyone is worn out, sensory overload, television non-stop, blah blah blah, in your fucking face non-stop, and you never ever ever get the proper moment of restful and sleep and entering into the world of sleep. Is there a sleep psyop? I don't know. Maybe there is. I don't know. But they've regulated and controlled everything in our lives. Why wouldn't they go? I've never heard anyone talk about how the controllers play with our sleep. Never. And yet, when you think about it, it's 50% of your life. Well, nearly 50% of your life. And yet, we don't think that they're interested in that as well. They're interested in every single thing we do. But they're not interested in 50% of what we do, and that's sleeping. Dream world. There's also, to finish on a good note, very beneficial things for this, because I have never had a dream where politicians were in it, or the effects of politics or economy were in there. It's very liberating when you realize that the other side of you is unaffected by the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune of this conscious existence, in this awake reality. That I've never had a dream where I've said, oh God, I'm really worried about government policy. You don't give a shit. In dreams you can fly. In dreams you can make love to people that wouldn't be interested in you in real life. In dreams you can have incredible experiences. Visit parts of the world you don't know. Visit other planets. In a meaningful way, in dreams you can have prophetic visions of the future. In dreams you can meet people that you know who are dead. Think about that one. Lots of us have had dreams about people and pets and friends and loved ones who had left this reality but were still very, very, very real in that reality. Now you heard me speak about the ancient Celtic, well pre-Celtic Britons and Irish people, how they had no fear of death because they were constantly putting themselves into the states of unreality through firelit processions, visiting the lands of their ancestors, going to places like Newgrange and Stonehenge. And so when they met the Romans or other types in the battlefield, the thing was they had no fear of death because they knew they were just going to the other side. The other side was literally not something that we believe in, but it's something we experience every single night when we drift into sleep. That's how close it is. That it's not, we don't have to spend all our time ghost hunting or doing seances to see, is there life beyond this life, when every single night when we go to sleep. We go into it. How powerful is that? How amazing is that? How liberating is that? And it costs nothing to go there. All you have to do is fall asleep. This also makes you wonder about these entities who cause nightmares. Are they a manifestation of a corruption of something in this reality, who do not want us to go into the full world of sleep? Are they the psychopaths? Are the psychopaths and the pathological and vicious entities in the sleep world the same thing? Anyone who's been involved with a psychopath knows that if you're bullied at work or anything like that, your sleeping is not the same. You just are so exhausted you fall asleep. It's something very strange. They're stopping you in this reality from having your full dreaming experience in the sleep reality. At the same time, when you're in the sleep reality, you have nightmares which limit your experience and force you to wake up screaming. Are the psychopaths infected by these entities on this earth? And is this why they don't dream? They don't dream about because they're already there. They can only exist in one or the other. They're not remembering. And another thing a few people have written to me about is when psychopaths, when they've had a psychopath in their life and the psychopath thing ends, their experience with them either in a relationship or bullied in work, they have psychic dreams about the psychopath which come true. Like one person I spoke to was a woman who was bullied in work, and when she left the job, she was in the shower one morning and it suddenly struck her that the psychopath who had been bullying her was about to do something. I think it was open a business in a specific building in a specific place. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And I've had things like that happen to me too as well. Now that's only because the woman who had that was in the shower the next morning recalling a specific journey in space and time into the dream world, from which this information was brought back. And that shows you how much more powerful the dream world is than any of the entheogens or any of the LSDs or any of these other substances that take you into altered states. They don't take you to the real place. The real place is sleep. And sleep is not only an unexplored territory, it's also a place that we have to explore. And we have to deal with confront with the issues and the entities in there in the same way we had to deal with the wild animals and the predators and the hostile tribes when we went into unexplored territory on this reality. So let's recapture the meaning of sleep. And you have a cat and you look at that cat sleeping 20 hours a day and you laugh and you say, what's wrong with you? You're wasting your life. I don't think that cat is wasting its life at all. I think that other 20 hours it's off out somewhere else, and house cats sleep more than outside cats for that reason, because their experiences are limited in this reality indoors, but because they haven't been screwed up like the rest of us, they can go to sleep for 20 hours a day inside a house and have a fully resolved experience in another reality. So my website is www.thomassheridanarts.com, and let's continue this dialogue. There's an email click there, and you can email me or get me on Facebook. I have to cut the comments on YouTube because of all the stalkers and the mental case and the cult members out there, but the rest and the flat earthers who've become particularly psychotic lately. But the rest of you who are sane and normal, let's continue this dialogue. I want to hear about your sleep experiences, and I want us to start thinking seriously about, are we ready to go and explore this unknown land of sleep, or little known land of sleep, because I think that is the El Dorado we have yet to set foot in. And the between alien abductions and all the other things they tell us, waking us up and changing our lifestyle patterns, the fact that the system itself makes us terrified of sleep or disrupts our sleep patterns constantly shows that they don't want us stepping into that little known country of sleep. Thank you very much. I'll see you next week, and feck 'em.